She had never imagined that the small apartment she called home could turn into a place of constant anxiety. It was modest, but it had been a sanctuary for years. Every corner held memories of quiet mornings, late-night conversations, and the laughter of friends who had once gathered there. But now, with mounting bills and unexpected expenses, that sanctuary felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She woke up one morning to the sound of a knock on her door. Her heart sank before she even opened it. The letter in her hands was official, marked with the bold words she feared the most: eviction notice. Her hands trembled slightly as she read through the formal language, each line hitting harder than the last. It was not just a paper. It was a warning that everything she had worked for, every small comfort and stability she had built, was at risk of being taken away. She tried to calm herself, to think clearly. There had to be a way to fight this. She had always believed that hard work and determination would carry her through difficult times. But this was different. This was legal, and legal battles were often expensive and slow. She thought about the court hearing that was scheduled in a few days, and a wave of fear washed over her. She had never faced anything like this before, standing alone against the machinery of the law. Her friends and neighbors tried to offer comfort. They listened patiently as she explained her situation, nodding with empathy but unable to offer much help beyond emotional support. Some suggested local assistance programs, but the paperwork seemed overwhelming and the deadlines were tight. She spent long hours sitting at her small kitchen table, filling out forms, gathering documents, and trying to make sense of a system that felt designed to push people like her aside. The night before the hearing, she barely slept. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. She imagined being forced out onto the street, carrying her few belongings in bags, facing the cold reality of homelessness. She thought about the neighbors she had grown close to, the routines she had established, and the life she had built in that small apartment. The thought of losing it all made her chest tighten with anxiety. The morning of the hearing, she dressed carefully, choosing the clothes that made her feel both confident and serious. She wanted to be taken seriously, to show the judge that she was responsible, capable, and deserving of a chance. She took a deep breath before leaving her apartment, clutching her documents tightly, and walked to the courthouse. Each step felt heavy, each breath a reminder of the stakes she faced. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. The room was filled with people, some waiting for their own cases, others observing quietly. The smell of polished wood and the low hum of conversation created a strange mix of formality and anxiety. She found her seat, trying to appear calm even as her heart pounded in her chest. The landlord's attorney was already there, confidently reviewing papers, a reminder of the challenge ahead. When her case was called, she stood and walked to the front of the courtroom. The judge looked down at her with a neutral expression, and for a moment she felt the weight of the entire room upon her shoulders. She began to speak, carefully explaining her situation, her financial struggles, and her efforts to keep up with rent despite the obstacles. She spoke with sincerity, hoping that her honesty and determination would be enough to sway the decision. The landlord's attorney presented his case with practiced efficiency, emphasizing the terms of the lease and the missed payments. He spoke quickly, methodically, making her feel small and unprepared in comparison. She listened, trying to maintain her composure, but every word felt like a blow to her sense of security. She realized that the law, while fair in principle, could sometimes feel cold and impersonal. She tried to interject with explanations, pointing out unexpected expenses, temporary setbacks, and her commitment to making things right. She showed receipts, bank statements, and letters from her workplace. She spoke about her family, her neighbors, and the life she had built in that apartment. She wanted the judge to see her not just as a tenant, but as a person who had fought hard to maintain stability in difficult circumstances. Time seemed to stretch as the courtroom deliberated. Every glance at the judge's face made her heart skip a beat. She noticed the expressions of those around her, some sympathetic, some indifferent, and felt a mixture of hope and dread. She wondered if her story was enough, if her efforts would be recognized, or if she would be told that the law left no room for mercy. Outside the courtroom, she remembered the friends and neighbors who had offered support. Their encouragement gave her strength, reminding her that she was not entirely alone. She thought about the moments of resilience she had shown in the past, the times she had faced challenges and come through stronger. She clung to that memory, hoping it would carry her through this trial. Hours felt like days as she waited for the decision. The judge called her back in and she walked slowly, each step heavy with anticipation. She took her seat and listened as the judge reviewed the case, noting her efforts, her documentation, and the circumstances surrounding her difficulties. There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt impossibly long. In that moment, she realized that this hearing was more than just a legal battle. It was a test of her resilience, her determination, and her ability to face uncertainty with courage. She thought about the apartment, the life she had built, and the small victories that had brought her to this point. She understood that no matter the outcome, she had fought with integrity and honesty. As the judge prepared to speak, she felt a mixture of fear and hope. She knew that the next words would determine whether she would be able to stay in her home or face the devastating reality of eviction. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, ready to hear whatever decision was made. In that moment, she realized that she had already shown remarkable courage, facing a situation that could have easily overwhelmed her. She held on to a quiet determination, a belief that somehow things might turn in her favor. She thought about every step she had taken to prepare for this day, every effort to advocate for herself, and every moment she had tried to stay strong despite the challenges. She reminded herself that even in the face of uncertainty, she had not given up. And as the courtroom fell silent, she braced herself for the moment that would decide her fate, unaware that the story was far from over, and that an unexpected intervention was about to change everything in ways she could never have imagined. She returned home after the first day in court feeling a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Her mind replayed every moment, the tense glances, the words of the landlord's attorney, and the uncertain expressions of the judge. She knew that the legal battle was just beginning, and that what had happened today was only the first step in a long and uncertain journey. The next morning, she started her day early, determined to prepare as much as possible for the next session. She spread out her papers across the kitchen table, organizing receipts, bills, and correspondence with her landlord. Each document was a small piece of evidence that told her story, a story of hard work, resilience, and the struggle to maintain a home in difficult circumstances. She reviewed everything carefully, making notes on what to emphasize and how to explain her situation clearly to the court. Despite the stress, she tried to maintain a routine. She went to work, managing her responsibilities with focus even as her mind lingered on the looming court dates. Her coworkers noticed the tension in her, offering kind words and encouragement, reminding her that she was not alone. Their support gave her a small sense of strength, though she still felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. She also reached out to local housing assistance organizations, hoping to find resources or advice that could help her case. The process was slow and filled with paperwork, but she persisted. Every phone call and every form she completed was a small step toward protecting her home. She realized that fighting an eviction was not just about showing up in court, it was about being thorough, organized, and persistent in every detail. When the second court session arrived, she felt a mix of anxiety and determination. She dressed carefully again, choosing her clothes to project confidence and seriousness. As she entered the courtroom, she noticed that more people were present this time, including observers who seemed interested in the proceedings. She felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, as if the story of her struggle was beginning to reach others. The judge reviewed her documents and asked her questions, seeking clarification on certain points. She explained calmly and clearly the unexpected expenses that had affected her ability to pay rent, the effort she had made to resolve the situation, and the support she had tried to secure from local programs. She wanted the judge to understand that she was not negligent, but facing circumstances that anyone could have encountered in similar situations. The landlord's attorney countered, highlighting the terms of the lease and emphasizing the missed payments. His tone was professional but firm, leaving no room for emotion. She listened carefully, taking note of the points she needed to address and remaining composed despite the tension. Every word felt important, every gesture observed, and every pause loaded with meaning. Between sessions, she reflected on the broader reality of the situation. She thought about others in her community who might be facing similar struggles and the challenges of navigating a complex legal system without significant support. The experience was eye-opening, revealing both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the legal and social structures meant to protect citizens. She also spent time seeking advice from friends who had some experience with legal matters. They suggested strategies for presenting her case more effectively, emphasizing key facts and appealing to the human aspect of her story. She took their advice seriously, refining her explanations, practicing her statements, and preparing for questions the judge might ask. She understood that clarity, sincerity, and preparedness could make a crucial difference. The courtroom became a place of focus, tension, and subtle hope. As she presented her case, she noticed small changes. The way the judge listened more intently, the occasional nod of acknowledgement, and the quiet attention from those observing. She realized that persistence, honesty, and calm determination could influence the perception of her struggle, even in a room dominated by formal procedures. During one of the breaks, she spoke quietly with a clerk who had been observing the proceedings. The clerk shared that similar cases often resulted in eviction, but occasionally, extraordinary circumstances could sway a decision. Her heart leapt with cautious optimism. She understood that her case was not over, but she began to sense that the persistence and thoroughness of her efforts were being noticed. Outside the courtroom, she continued to reflect on her situation. She walked slowly, letting the cool air calm her racing thoughts. She considered what had brought her here: the unexpected expenses, the pressures of daily life, and the small misfortunes that compounded over time. She realized that while she could not control every challenge, she could control her response, her determination, and her preparation. Back home, she spent hours reviewing her finances and making a detailed plan for the future. She mapped out possible scenarios, considered backup plans, and made lists of resources she could tap into if needed. Every action, she understood, was a step toward not just surviving this legal battle, but building stability for the months and years ahead. Her emotional state oscillated between hope and fear. She allowed herself moments of vulnerability, crying quietly when the stress felt overwhelming. But she also reminded herself of her strength and past resilience. She had faced difficulties before, and she knew that persistence, patience, and careful preparation were essential tools in overcoming adversity. The second court session concluded with no final decision, but she felt a small sense of progress. She had presented her case more confidently, addressed questions more clearly, and made a stronger impression than before. She left the courtroom determined to continue her fight, understanding that this journey was about more than just her apartment. It was about asserting her right to stability and fairness. She also began to consider how sharing her story publicly might help. She thought about writing a detailed account of her struggle, hoping that if others knew her experience, it might draw attention to the challenges faced by many families in similar situations. She realized that sometimes visibility could be a powerful tool in influencing outcomes and bringing support from unexpected sources. As days turned into weeks, she continued to prepare diligently for every court appearance. Each step, organizing documents, consulting with advisors, attending sessions, was part of a larger strategy. She grew more confident in her ability to advocate for herself, and she noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, her voice, and her presence in the courtroom. Confidence, she understood, was as important as the facts she presented. During one session, she overheard the judge making notes and asking detailed questions about her efforts to seek assistance. The judge's curiosity suggested that the story of her perseverance was resonating in a way she had not expected. It was a small, almost imperceptible sign, but it gave her hope that her sincerity and determination were making an impact. Through it all, she leaned on her support network, friends, neighbors, and colleagues who offered encouragement, advice, and practical help. Their belief in her ability to succeed reinforced her own determination. She realized that facing adversity was not something one had to do entirely alone. Support, even in small ways, could make a significant difference. As she prepared for the next session, she reflected on what she had learned. Legal battles were not just about rules and documents. They were about human stories, persistence, and the ability to present oneself with honesty and clarity. She understood that her journey was about much more than her immediate situation. It was about resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet strength found in refusing to give up. She arrived at the courthouse with a sense of cautious optimism, feeling more prepared and more confident than in the first session. Every detail, every document, every explanation was carefully considered. She approached the judge in the courtroom with a calm determination, ready to continue advocating for herself and her home. As she spoke, she noticed the reactions of those present. They were emotionally charged, some with anger, others with concern. She realized that The subtle nods, the attentive expressions, and the quiet acknowledgement of her efforts. It was a reminder that even in the formal and sometimes intimidating environment of a courtroom, the human element, the story, the perseverance, and the courage was what could ultimately make a difference. By the end of the day, she left the courthouse exhausted but hopeful. She understood that the battle was far from over, but she also knew that each step she took, each effort she made, brought her closer to a resolution. She carried with her a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her determination and careful preparation were her greatest tools in facing the uncertainty ahead. After the second court session, she returned home feeling both exhausted and cautiously hopeful. The legal process was slow and demanding, but she noticed subtle signs that her persistence and careful preparation were making a difference. Yet, despite these small victories, the uncertainty of the outcome weighed heavily on her, and she knew that she needed more than just her own efforts to secure her home. Her story, shared quietly with a few neighbors and friends, began to spread beyond her immediate circle. One evening, a neighbor approached her and mentioned that someone had posted about her situation online. She had mixed feelings, relief that people were learning about her struggle, but also anxiety about how public attention could affect her case. Still, she understood that sometimes visibility could bring unexpected help. The online post began to gather attention slowly. People empathized with her situation and shared messages of encouragement. She received kind words from strangers, some offering advice while others simply expressed support. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of connection beyond her immediate community. She realized that her story had the power to resonate with others, and that connection offered both comfort and hope. A few days later, she received an unexpected phone call. A representative from a local advocacy group had seen the online post and wanted to help. They offered guidance on how to strengthen her legal case, and more importantly, they informed her that her situation had caught the attention of higher authorities. They mentioned that the White House had become aware of her story through public channels and was monitoring cases of housing insecurity. The thought was overwhelming. She could hardly imagine that her struggle, something so personal and local, had reached such a significant level. Her mind raced with questions. How would this influence her case? What did it mean for her and her family? Was this the turning point she had been waiting for? She continued to attend court sessions, now carrying with her the subtle knowledge that her case had broader attention. The courtroom felt different. Her story was no longer just about missed payments or lease agreements. It had become a symbol of the challenges many people faced in securing stable housing. She noticed that the judge seemed more attentive, asking more detailed questions and reviewing her documentation carefully. Her interactions with her attorney also changed. They discussed the possibility of incorporating the public attention and advocacy support into her case. They strategized on how to present her story with clarity and empathy, emphasizing not only the financial details but also the human aspect, the impact of eviction on her daily life, her family, and her community. They wanted the judge to see her not just as a tenant, but as a person deserving fairness and consideration. Outside of court, she spent hours organizing her thoughts and refining her explanations. She knew that every detail mattered and that presenting her story effectively could influence the perception of her case. She also continued to connect with the advocacy group, receiving guidance on communication, legal rights, and additional resources she could access. Each conversation gave her more confidence and a sense of being supported, even as the stakes remained high. As her story gained more attention online, journalists and local media began to inquire about her situation. They requested interviews, which she approached cautiously, aware of the potential impact on her legal case. She shared her experiences honestly, highlighting her struggles, her persistence, and the effort she had made to resolve the situation responsibly. The media coverage helped amplify her story, drawing attention to the broader issue of housing insecurity and the challenges faced by ordinary people. The court sessions continued, with each day bringing new questions, more documentation, and careful consideration by the judge. She spoke with sincerity and calm determination, addressing each concern raised by the landlord's attorney in the court. Her preparation paid off, as the judge seemed increasingly attentive and responsive to the details of her situation. The courtroom, once a place of fear and uncertainty, began to feel like a space where her voice could be heard and her efforts recognized. Outside of the courtroom, She continued to experience moments of doubt and anxiety. The weight of public attention, legal uncertainty, and personal responsibility often felt overwhelming. Yet she reminded herself of the support she had received, the strategies she had developed, and the resilience she had shown throughout the process. She knew that each day of preparation, each careful explanation, and each effort to advocate for herself was moving her closer to a potential resolution. Then, one morning, an unexpected development occurred. She received a formal letter from the White House acknowledging her situation and expressing concern for her well-being. The letter requested that the court review her case with special consideration, highlighting her persistence and the efforts she had made to resolve her challenges. The words were carefully chosen, respectful yet firm, signaling a level of attention and support she had never anticipated. The impact of this letter was immediate. She felt a mixture of shock, relief, and renewed hope. The thought that her case had reached such a high level of attention made her realize that her efforts were not going unnoticed. The letter carried weight, not only in the legal sense but also in the emotional sense, reinforcing her determination and validating her struggle. When she returned to court with the letter, the atmosphere was different. The judge read the communication carefully, asking questions about the context and the circumstances surrounding her case. The landlord's attorney responded with professional caution, aware of the new dimension the letter introduced. She observed the reactions of everyone in the room, the subtle shifts in expression, the quiet acknowledgement of the unexpected intervention. It was a moment that emphasized the human aspect of the legal process, the way compassion and attention could influence outcomes. Her presentation in court took on a renewed sense of purpose. She spoke with clarity and sincerity, addressing both the legal details and the personal impact of eviction. She emphasized her efforts, her financial challenges, and the steps she had taken to maintain stability. The presence of the White House letter added credibility and urgency to her case, signaling that her story had broader significance beyond the immediate dispute. As the session progressed, she noticed that the courtroom observers were attentive, some exchanging quiet comments about the unusual development. The media presence, though restrained, added a sense of public awareness that reinforced the importance of fairness and transparency. She felt the weight of responsibility, not only to herself but to the broader community whose struggles were reflected in her story. Outside the courtroom, she took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. From the initial fear and uncertainty, through the careful preparation, persistence, and community support, to the unexpected intervention, she realized that her journey was a testament to resilience and determination. The legal battle was not just about her apartment. It was about advocacy, awareness, and the power of persistence in the face of adversity. She continued to prepare for the following sessions, knowing that the outcome was still not guaranteed. Every detail mattered, and she remained committed to presenting her case with honesty, clarity, and calm determination. The White House intervention had brought hope, but she understood that the resolution would require continued effort, focus, and careful advocacy. Throughout this process, she also became more aware of the broader societal issues highlighted by her case. She thought about the challenges faced by others in similar situations, the complexity of navigating legal systems, and the importance of support networks, advocacy, and public awareness. Her experience had opened her eyes to the interconnectedness of individual struggles and systemic challenges, and she felt a growing sense of responsibility to use her story to inspire understanding and change. As the court sessions continued, she found moments of quiet reflection. She walked through the city streets, observing the lives of others, thinking about the families, neighbors, and communities affected by similar struggles. She felt a sense of connection and empathy, understanding that her journey was both personal and representative of broader challenges. The anticipation for each session remained intense, but she faced it with increasing confidence. Her preparation, the support she had received, and the unexpected intervention had all contributed to a sense of empowerment. She understood that while uncertainty remained, she had done everything possible to advocate for herself and her home. With each day, she grew more aware of the delicate balance between hope and anxiety, between preparation and uncertainty. She embraced the lessons of resilience, determination, and the importance of human connection, recognizing that these qualities were essential not only in legal battles, but in facing life's challenges more broadly. And so, As she prepared for the next session, she held on to a quiet sense of optimism. The journey was far from over, but the unexpected attention, public support, and her own persistence had created a new sense of possibility. She understood that her story had the potential to influence not just her own outcome, but the awareness of others facing similar struggles, and she carried that understanding with both pride and responsibility. The day she had been both hoping and fearing finally arrived. The courtroom seemed different from all the previous sessions. There was a quiet tension in the air, a sense that something unexpected was about to unfold. She walked through the doors, clutching her documents, and noticed that the White House representative was already present. The presence alone sent a shiver of hope through her, but also a new wave of nervousness. She knew that this was unprecedented, and she felt both the weight of expectation and the possibility of a positive turn. She took a seat and tried to calm her racing thoughts. The courtroom was filled with observers, many of whom had heard of the intervention. Reporters sat quietly waiting for a development, while the judge reviewed the papers in front of them. The landlord's attorney maintained his professional composure, though she sensed a subtle shift in his demeanor. The courtroom was no longer just a place of routine proceedings. It had become a stage where the outcome might be influenced by forces far beyond the usual process. When her case was called, she rose and walked forward, her heart pounding. She presented her situation clearly and calmly, emphasizing both the challenges she had faced and the steps she had taken to address them responsibly. She spoke of the effort she had made to pay rent, seek assistance, and maintain her home. She highlighted the personal impact of eviction, the instability it could create, and the broader lessons about resilience and fairness. Then the White House representative spoke. Their voice was steady and professional, conveying both authority and concern. They explained that they had reviewed her case and recognized the effort, integrity, and determination she had demonstrated. They emphasized the potential consequences of eviction on her and her family, and urged the court to consider the human elements alongside the legal requirements. The words carried weight, and she could feel the shift in the room. The judge paused, listening intently, and even the landlord's attorney seemed to reconsider the approach. She watched as the courtroom absorbed this unexpected development. Some people whispered quietly, astonished by the presence of such an influential figure and the force of their intervention. Others looked at her with a mixture of empathy and curiosity. She felt a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. After weeks of fear, preparation, and uncertainty, her story had reached a level of recognition she could hardly have imagined. The judge asked several questions, seeking to understand the situation fully. They inquired about the steps she had taken, the resources she had accessed, and the specific circumstances leading to the difficulty with her rent. She answered honestly and thoroughly, making sure that every detail was clear and every effort documented. The courtroom was quiet, attentive, and focused on the human story behind the legal case. The landlord's attorney presented his points as before, citing the terms of the lease and emphasizing the importance of adhering to the law. But there was a noticeable difference in the energy of the proceedings. The attorney was careful, measured, and seemingly aware that the intervention added a new dimension to the case. The balance of power had shifted subtly, and she felt that her perseverance, honesty, and the support she had garnered were having a real impact. She remembered the long nights of preparation, the hours spent organizing documents, and the careful explanations she had rehearsed. Every step she had taken to present her case with clarity and integrity now felt meaningful. She realized that her persistence was paying off, not just in the documents and arguments, but in the recognition of her struggle as real, valid, and worthy of consideration. During a brief recess, she stepped outside the courtroom and took a deep breath. The cool air helped calm her nerves, but she also felt the weight of the moment. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear, uncertainty, and countless hours of preparation. She thought about the friends and neighbors who had supported her, the strangers who had offered advice, and the people who had helped amplify her story. Each of them had played a role in this pivotal moment. Returning to the courtroom, she noticed the attentive expressions of those present. The judge seemed more engaged, the observers quietly hopeful, and even the landlord's attorney appeared to consider a more reasonable approach. When the proceedings resumed, the White House representative spoke again, reinforcing the importance of fairness and the potential human consequences of eviction. The words resonated, carrying authority and compassion. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and humility. The intervention was not just about authority or influence. It was about acknowledging her effort, her integrity, and the human reality of her struggle. She realized that sometimes extraordinary circumstances required extraordinary measures, and that the persistence and honesty she had shown could inspire action beyond the ordinary. As the session continued, the judge reviewed all the documents, listened to the arguments, and considered the intervention carefully. The courtroom remained silent, each moment stretched by the gravity of the situation. She focused on her breathing, grounding herself in the present, aware that the outcome could determine the next chapter of her life. Yet despite the tension, she felt a quiet confidence. She had done everything possible to present her case truthfully and diligently, and now the larger forces of recognition and support were working in her favor. The White House representative remained present throughout, offering clarifications and emphasizing the fairness aspect. Their presence reminded her that her story had grown beyond personal struggle. It had become a testament to perseverance, community support, and the importance of advocating for justice. She understood that this moment was not just about legal victory, but about the acknowledgement of human effort, resilience, and dignity. The judge took time to deliberate, carefully considering the case in light of the intervention and the evidence presented. She could feel the weight of anticipation pressing on her chest, yet she maintained composure, aware that patience and calm were essential. The room was tense, filled with silent attention as the decision approached. Finally, the judge spoke, acknowledging the thoroughness of her case, the efforts she had made to seek assistance, and the human impact of eviction. They noted the intervention from the White House and considered the broader implications. The words were measured but hopeful, signaling a recognition of her struggle and a willingness to provide relief. She felt a wave of relief, hope, and disbelief wash over her. After so many weeks of uncertainty and effort, her perseverance had reached a turning point. She realized that this moment was the culmination of her resilience, honesty, and determination. The intervention had amplified her voice, brought attention to her case, and underscored the importance of fairness. She understood that while the legal process was critical, the human story behind it was equally significant. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for those who had supported her, advised her, and believed in her during the most challenging times. As she left the courtroom that day, the weight of fear and uncertainty had lifted, replaced by cautious optimism and relief. She knew that there were still steps to take, follow-ups to manage, and the process to finalize, but the trajectory had changed. Her story, her persistence, and the intervention had combined to create a moment of possibility, a chance to retain her home and stability. Back at home, she reflected on the extraordinary events of the day. The journey from fear to hope had been long, filled with struggle, preparation, and human connection. She understood that resilience was not just about enduring challenges, but about seeking support, presenting oneself honestly, and allowing others to help when necessary. Her experience had reinforced the importance of perseverance, community, and advocacy. She looked around her apartment, taking in the familiar surroundings that had once felt fragile and uncertain. The walls, the furniture, the small personal touches, all were symbols of the life she had built and the home she had fought to protect. She realized that her determination had not only preserved her immediate circumstances, but had also highlighted the value of human effort and dignity. In the quiet moments of reflection, she thought about the broader lessons of her experience. She understood that personal struggle could resonate widely, that advocacy could create real change, and that persistence, honesty, and courage were powerful tools in facing adversity. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue building stability, supporting her community, and sharing the story of resilience that had carried her through one of the most challenging periods of her life.